In 1964, Nelson Mandela stood before the South African court during the Rivonia trial, which took place during South Africa's apartheid era of 1948 through 1990. Apartheid was created in efforts to give political power to the white minority by separating them from the non-white majority. Essentially, it was the institutionalization of racism. During this trial, 10 opponents of the apartheid were being tried on 4 charges, which essentially were opposing government laws. The purpose of Nelson Mandela's speech was to not only inform his audience about apartheid injustices, but to put apartheid itself on trial. He uses his platform to expose lies, truths, and to clarify the government's role in this trial, and he ultimately uses his time to speak to fight against institutionalized racism that put him in this unfortunate position. Today I'll be focusing on the classical form of analysis to explore the rhetorical devices used by Nelson Mandela. In order to do this, I'll describe how he used ethos to create credibility, pathos to allow his audience to understand him on an emotional level, and lastly, how he uses logos to add logic to his argument. Beginning with ethos, the Nelson Mandela we know today is the ex-president of South Africa. He has won over 200 awards, but in 1964, when the trial was in session, he was viewed as just another Black man in South Africa. He stood before the courts and noted his education history, his occupation, and where he is today. He also established credibility by constantly referring to his involvement in the African National Congress, which I'll refer to as the ANC. He introduced his credibility by stating the following: "My lord, I am the first accused. I hold a bachelor's degree in arts and practice as an attorney in Johannesburg for a number of years in partnership with Mr. Oliver Tambo, a co-conspirator in this case. I'm a convicted prisoner serving 5 years for leaving the country without a permit and for inciting people to go on a strike at the end of May 1961, end quote. Mandela informs us that he is more than the prosecution is trying to paint him out to be. He's not a communist and he's not a terrorist. Secondly, I'll analyze Mandela's use of pathos. In order to tug at the heartstrings of the audience, Mandela uses pathos in 2 ways. For starters, he states that he envisions the ideal of a democratic society by using a lighthearted and inviting tone. Furthermore, he begins to claim that he is not afraid to fight for freedom towards the end of his speech. Now, the tone has shifted, and it highlights the fact that Mandela is not afraid to evoke emotions of violence and anger now. He states these emotions in the following quote: "During my lifetime, I have dedicated myself to the struggle of the African people. I have fought against white domination and I have fought against Black domination. I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. It is an ideal which I hope to live for and to achieve, but if needs be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die," end quote. He goes on to note that Africans should be able to decide where they live, where they work without government interference, and they don't have these simple rights. Lastly, the logo's appeal can be found during Mandela's account of what truly happened on the day he and his colleagues were arrested. He agrees that they were not participating in a peaceful demonstration, but because after countless ANC peaceful demonstrations, they were still deemed unlawful. He goes on to condemn these laws that made any protest of laws unlawful, and for these reasons he admits to being violent, but he draws the line at being a terrorist. He walks us through this logic by claiming the following: "This conclusion was not easily arrived at. It was only when all else had failed, that all channels of peaceful protest have been barred to us, that the decision was made to embark on violent forms of political struggle. We did not do so because we desired such a course, but solely because the government had left us with no other choice," end quote. Although Nelson Mandela essentially admitted his guilt In this statement, he turned the trial around and formed a real question: is apartheid the true act of terrorism here? The ANC claimed that the government had tried to influence his case by painting them as dangerous, violent animals, when in reality the ANC felt the exact same about the South African government. After the trial, Mandela was sentenced to 27 years in prison, which he only spent 18, but he continued to fight apartheid until its end in 1990, and he later became South African president in 1994. In conclusion, we learned that Mandela used his rhetorical devices effectively because eventually he did accomplish his goal of ending institutionalized racism, known as the apartheid in South Africa. Thank you.